Okay, here's a question. What happens when, like, ancient wisdom and really cutting edge science don't just exist side by side, but actually seem to reflect each other?
Hmm.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into exactly that. We're looking at Bittul, this really profound spiritual idea from Chassidic. It often gets translated as self-nullification or maybe self-transcendence.
Right.
And we're exploring its surprising echoes in, of all places, quantum mechanics.
It really is a fascinating convergence, yeah. Our mission, really, in this deep dive is to explore how these timeless principles,
Yeah.
ego, humility, cooperation, viewed through that spiritual lens, how they find resonance in the fundamental building blocks and forces of our actual universe.
Amazing. And we should mention all these insights are drawn from Rabbi Shlomo Ezagui's work, Bittul, Quantum Harmony of Spiritual and Scientific Coexistence.
That's the one.
So, all right, let's start with the spiritual foundation. What exactly is Bittul? Why is it so, well, central?
Well, at its core, bittul,
Yeah.
it's a Hebrew word, and it really conveys this sense of nullification. It's about consciously reducing your ego, your personal will.
Okay.
It's not about, like, erasing yourself entirely. It's more about setting aside your own limited, kind of self-focused perspective and desires.
So, less about vanishing and more about creating space,
Yeah.
aligning with something, much bigger than just yourself.
Precisely. Exactly. Its ultimate purpose is really to foster a complete connection, a unification with the divine. It lets you align with the divine essence that's actually within you.
Oh, okay.
In Chassidic, it's really seen as the highest form of spiritual surrender, of unity. And interestingly, it's also considered a powerful way to sort of attract blessings into your life.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. If you're kind of out of your own way, then there's more room for everything else, right? Including that divine flow. And the source, it gives some incredibly vivid stories to illustrate this. The practical impact of ego versus humility. The one about the shamash immediately comes to mind.
Ah, yes, the Shamash story. Right. So a Shamash is like a synagogue assistant.
Okay.
And he comes to the Rebbe pretty frustrated, basically complaining that he feels like everyone's walking all over him. Whatever he says seems to cause friction. He always feels like he's in someone's way.
Sounds stressful. And how did the Rebbe respond to that feeling of being constantly challenged?
Well, the Rebbe's advice was quite direct. He essentially said, look, if you feel you need to have an opinion about everything, and you don't really allow others the room to just be, to express themselves, well, it's no wonder you feel challenged all the time.
Hmm. Makes sense.
He advised him to practice humility. He actually drew from a teaching in Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, which says, be humble before everyone. This, the Rebbe explained, creates genuine space, not just for others, but ultimately for your own benefit too.
Wow. So instead of feeling threatened by other people, humility actually opens you up, lets you benefit from their presence. It really reminds me of that verse in Ecclesiastes. Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. Cooperation isn't just an ideal, it's a practical truth.
Exactly. That's it. When you step back from needing to assert your opinion on absolutely everything, you don't just avoid conflict. You actually open yourself up to a much richer, more cooperative experience.
Okay. And if self-importance shows up in our opinions, how does it manifest, physically in the space we take up? The source tells that story of the squeezed chassid at a Farbrengen. Can you paint that picture?
Sure. So a Farbrengen, it's a Chassidic gathering, often very crowded, very joyful.
Right.
And this particular chassid, he's feeling squeezed by the crowd, packed in tight, and he lets out this sigh, just a sigh of exasperation.
Uh-huh.
The Rebbe hears this very subtle reaction and interprets it really deeply. He said that sigh showed the chassid was being a nifrad. It's a Hebrew term, means like a separate being.
A separate being.
Yeah. Meaning he was unable to really accept challenges to his personal space or, share it willingly with others. He felt imposed upon.
So whether it's feeling challenged by opinions or feeling physically crowded, it sounds like it points to the same root issue, right? A strong, kind of demanding ego. And this echoes an even stronger expression from the Talmud about arrogance, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, yeah. The Talmud famously quotes God as saying, regarding an arrogant person, I and that individual cannot dwell together.
Wow.
And the reasoning behind that is profound. If a person takes all the credit for themselves, believing they are the only reason for their success, excluding God, excluding others, then in a way, God says, okay, I respect this person's perspective that it's all about him. And in doing that, God, you could say, sort of withdraws from that person's immediate sphere.
That's a really powerful image. It makes Bittul seem less like just a nice spiritual idea and more like Well, fundamental, a necessity for real connection, real success. And there's that amazing anecdote, the one about the Chassidim and the Russian officers, that really shows Bittul in action, right? It's practical power.
Oh, it's one of the most striking examples for sure. This was during Soviet times, obviously a very oppressive environment. These Chassidim, they were spiritually uplifted after a Farbrengen, walking home, singing loudly.
Which was totally forbidden.
Totally forbidden, exactly. So Russian officers stopped them, demand, who goes there? And the Chassidim replied, simply, Bittul goes here.
Bittul goes here, meaning like nobody important here, just an expression of godly energy.
Exactly that. No ego, no individual standing out. And the result, remarkably, the officers, maybe confused, maybe just disarmed by such an unusual answer, they just let them go, let them continue on their way.
Incredible.
It just illustrates how Bittul, when it's an authentic act of, self-effacement, it can have tangible, totally unexpected results. It's a spiritual principle, but with real-world impact.
Okay, so we've really unpacked Bittul, this deep spiritual idea of nullifying the ego, humility, making space. Now here's where it gets truly mind-bending. Because the source explains how the precise balance of states in quantum mechanics, the physics of the very small, surprisingly mirrors these very spiritual ideas. And it's apparently crucial for the world even existing.
It's what's so compelling, really. Quantum mechanics reveals these two fundamentally different types of particles.
Yeah.
And each type behaves in ways that, well, perfectly seem to reflect the spiritual principles we've just been talking about. It's almost like an intentional design.
Okay, let's break this down. Let's start with fermions. They're often called the separate builders of matter. When I think of building blocks that can't share space, the Pauli exclusion principle jumps out. What does that tell us?
Right, the Pauli exclusion principle. It's absolutely fundamental in quantum mechanics. It basically states that no two identical fermions, think electrons, protons, neutrons, can occupy the exact same quantum state at the exact same time. Every electron, for instance, needs its own unique address within an atom, its own specific energy level, spin, location, relatively speaking.
And it's this property, this refusal to share, that actually builds our world, right? I mean, these particles make up atoms, molecules. Their inability to be in the same quantum state is what gives atoms structure. It makes things solid. It creates the diversity of matter around us.
Precisely.
Without them sticking to this one spot, one particle rule, the universe as we know it. I mean, with different elements, with life, it just couldn't exist.
And that's where the analogy becomes so clear, so stark. The fermion's inherent separateness, its inability to share that quantum space, it directly parallels the knife thread, the separate chassis, or even the egoistic shamash feeling crowded. It's like the physical manifestation of no room for anyone else.
Right.
But crucially, it's exactly this separateness that allows for structure, for distinctness in the physical world.
Okay, so if fermions are the distinct sort of individualistic building blocks, what about their counterparts, the bosons, the connected carriers of force? How are they different?
Bosons, particles, like photons, which carry light, or gluons, holding atomic nuclei together, even certain atoms like helium-4 under the right conditions, they are the complete opposite of fermions in this respect.
Opposite how?
Any number of identical bosons can share the exact same quantum state. They can pile into the same space, the same state, simultaneously. They're fundamentally communal, gregarious even.
Wow. Okay, that is a huge difference. So what's their job in the universe then?
Well, they are the particles responsible for all the fundamental interactions and forces. Light, magnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces that govern radioactivity and atomic structure.
All the connections.
Exactly. Because they can occupy the same state, they enable cooperation and interaction on the most fundamental level. This unique property, it also leads to really cool phenomena like lasers, where countless photons act in perfect unison, or superfluidity in helium.
Right.
And in things like quantum technologies, this ability to unify, to all be in the same energy state, can lead to what the source calls enhanced performance. Think quantum engines or information processing.
So, okay, if fermions, in their distinctness, are maybe like the individualistic ego that builds separate identities, then bosons, with their ability to share and unify, they kind of embody the essence of Bittul, the benefits of humility, of collective effort.
That's a really insightful way to put it, yeah. Bosons' inherent nature, their ability to share and cooperate, it acts as this direct physical echo of the spiritual concept of Bittul. It reflects that power of humility, of collective action. The universe itself seems to leverage this Bittul principle at its most basic level to create unity and interaction.
So what does this fundamental duality in physics tell us, then, about the paradox of creation itself? We seem to need both, don't we? The separateness of fermions and the unity of bosons.
Exactly. That's the crux of it. While bosons show this enhanced performance through sharing and unity, you absolutely need fermions to build the structured, solid physical world that we actually perceive and live in.
Right. Without their boundaries.
There'd be no atoms, no molecules, no us. The source concludes with this idea that God designed a physical world that in some ways kind of deceives us into thinking that what we see is the only real thing, and that a core limitation we face as humans in this world is often our own lack of room for others, our own lack of Bittul.
It's genuinely astounding, isn't it? Just how a spiritual principle about humility, about self-transcendence, can find such a precise mirror in the laws governing the tiniest particles that make up, well, everything.
Yeah.
From that egoistic shamash to the unyielding electron, and then from the cooperating chastim to the unified photon. It feels like the universe is whispering the same deep truth from different directions.
It's truly remarkable. It suggests the very fabric of reality might be designed on this delicate balance. You can almost see Bittul, that ability to make room for others, for the divine, not just as a spiritual virtue, but maybe as a core design principle woven right into existence itself.
And that leaves us with a really thought-provoking paradox to chew on. The source mentions the furnishings in the Holy of Holies in the ancient temple. They had precise physical measurements, yet somehow, miraculously, they took up no actual space within the chamber.
A powerful image.
It really is.
Yeah.
Existing, yet not occupying. So if we think about that, how do we, in our own lives, square the idea of being somebody that God relies on to fulfill the creation? I mean, each of us with our unique role, our identity. How do we square that with the simultaneous, equally profound awareness that there is nothing else but Him, and that ultimately it is He who gives me the strength to be successful? How can we live in a world where we, like fermions, necessarily have individual boundaries, distinct identities, yet constantly strive for that unity, that cooperation, that boundless potential that's exemplified by bosons? It's a question worth keeping in mind, isn't it, as we navigate our daily lives?